You've been covering this very closely for a long time. You know that there are even more skeptics than supporters. It's more dramatic than the fight over Tesla on Twitter. What do you make of the incredible rise of Bitcoin?
Yeah, it really is stark when you take a look at that chart. You pull it out all the way back to the beginning, which, it's really time compressed. You're only talking about less than 10 years of time history at this point, but you can see that really stark performance where you start basically from zero. And if you got in at the very first transaction for Bitcoin, it was 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 pizzas, which, when you go to where it was at its peak, $20,000 for 1 Bitcoin, yeah, that is a really impressive return, 9 million %, as you say. But as you point out, along the way, Bitcoin's picked up a lot of skeptics. There's a lot of skepticism out there, a lot more institutional scrutiny, certainly regulatory scrutiny. So obviously the question is, if you buy now, are you going to get another 9 million %? And that seems unlikely, but hey, crazier things have happened over the last 10 years with Bitcoin.
Yeah, I'm sure you know that I lived on Bitcoin for 2 weeks as a part of a special report that we did here at Bloomberg in 2012. At the time, I could buy Bitcoin for only $600. It was difficult to find groceries and gas stations that would take it, but it worked to some extent. Still, it's never really picked up as a way to do transactions. You mentioned the pizza. There's famous stories of people buying, a Lamborghini with Bitcoin, but it still doesn't work as a daily currency. Is there any expectation that someday, Eric, I'm going to be able to walk down to Dunkin' Donuts and pick up a box of crullers with my Bitcoin on my phone?
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about the actual use case for Bitcoin, because I think the narrative on what Bitcoin is and what it's supposed to do has shifted over the last 10 years. When it first was invented at the very beginning of Bitcoin time and crypto time, there was an argument that, hey, it was supposed to replace the US dollar. It's supposed to be the next future medium of exchange. But that narrative, I think, has shifted over the last 10 years. Now, a lot of people who are Bitcoin evangelists, when you talk about Bitcoin, a lot of people are owning Bitcoin because they think it's going to rise in value, that it's digital gold, which, I don't use gold to buy, stuff at the dollar store. I don't think you do either, which is different from the original intention of what Bitcoin was for. And when you talk about cryptocurrencies even that could be used for transactions like what you're describing, there are other options, and there are also other competitors that are being developed over the last few years. And in fact, when you take a look at some of the countries where they're really on the forefront of digital transactions, for instance, a place like China, you might actually see, and we're actually seeing, the Chinese government is working on cryptocurrencies of their own, which, it's more likely that you'll end up seeing someone buying something in using one of those cryptocurrencies than Bitcoin. But you make the argument that the people who are Bitcoin maximalists don't even really see Bitcoin as being used to buy, a pack of smokes anymore.